Folks, welcome to Movie News Monday, where every single Monday, live on Twitch, we cover everything going on in the world of entertainment. We're talking movies, television, podcasts, streaming, YouTube, what? I don't even know. Everything's changing nowadays. So from the MCU to the DCU, you know what it is. Hey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can be in the know of what the heck is happening in the world of Hollywood and beyond. And folks, let's just dive into it. Let's address the Kennedy in the room. And no, not that Kennedy, the Kathleen, Lucasfilm President, Kathleen Kennedy. Oh, folks, official from Lucasfilm. Kathleen Kennedy, after, years and years and years of serving Lucasfilm, is officially stepping down as president of Lucasfilm. This is honestly a little bit of a long time coming, and it's been a tumultuous time in the world of Star Wars, and even as a fan, I mean, clearly, shout out Super Yaki store if you've never heard of them. Clearly it's been a tough time with Star Wars, and it's due time for a shakeup. We've had so many cancellations, we've had so many reshufflings. Star Wars has essentially been, by all intents and purposes, demoted to a television IP where, we had a time period where the original Star Wars: A New Hope created the box office, the summer box office blockbuster. We're talking about Force Awakens was in the top 10 films of all time for a period. Like, Star Wars is supposed to be an absolute global superpower in the box office, and it just hasn't been that for quite some time. So, though Kathleen Kennedy is definitely owed her flowers for everything that she's done for the studio, things like Andor, things like The Mandalorian, and things like, shepherding through the sequel trilogy, regardless of how you feel about it. I know my feelings are mixed and complicated, and, you never have to be full one camp or the other. She is officially stepping down, and taking her place are Dave Filoni and Lin-Manuel Brennan, who will be running the company as co-presidents. Now, this is fascinating. This is an interesting direction and interesting move from Lucasfilm. It is actually not unlike other branches of Disney that they would choose to do this. It happened with Pixar. It happened with Walt Disney Studios. It's happened with 20th Century. So many different arms of the Disney corporate world. Hey, we did a video on that once too. Has this structure where they have someone sort of running business operations and someone running creative operations. So Dave Filoni, who most people know him as essentially George Lucas's protege, he was personally selected by George Lucas, plucked out of Avatar: The Last Airbender and the world of animation to help run and eventually take over the Clone Wars animated series. Filoni co-created Ahsoka Tano with George Lucas and gave us all of her amazing arc, as well as being really the creative force behind shows like Star Wars Rebels and the final season for Clone Wars. Dave Filoni also co-wrote The Mandalorian with Jon Favreau. So he's got quite the repertoire of success and knowledge in the world of Star Wars. And he will now operating as President and Chief Creative Officer. Meanwhile, Lin-Manuel Brennan will be serving as co-president, sort of overseeing more of the technical and logistical components of the business. Lin-Manuel Brennan has also been involved with Lucasfilm for quite some time. She sort of came up through the back-end executive producing world, through the world of visual effects. She worked in ILM for quite some time, worked on basically every single movie ever, because ILM has touched basically every single franchise ever And then, of course, eventually transition from just being part of ILM to being part of Lucasfilm and being involved with Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all of those. So these, excuse me, these two will be taking the reins over from Kathleen Kennedy. And, you know, with this announcement, we hear so much. You know, Filoni says, "My love of storytelling was shaped by the films of Kathleen Kennedy and George Lucas. I never dreamed I would be privileged to learn the craft of filmmaking from both of them. May the force be with you," to Kathleen. Brennan also said, "Lucasfilm has played such a meaningful part in my life. It's a community of inspiring storytellers with a rebel spirit like no honor. Kathleen Kennedy and Alan Bergman have unwavering faith in Dave's creative vision for the next chapter in this storied studio's legacy." And then, you know, Kathleen Kennedy kind of her tenure really began with the Lucasfilm acquisition when George Lucas sold Lucasfilm and all of its subsidiaries to Walt Disney years and years and years ago. And now she's going to be stepping away and going back into the world of independent filmmaking. So hats off to Kathleen Kennedy. Thank you for your years of service to Star Wars. I hope that... Look, it's complicated. But I really do hope that this is an opportunity for the fandom to take a breath and reset. Kathleen Kennedy has been villainized by a lot of the Star Wars fandom, just because, you know, she's the person in charge and she is a she. Let's call a spade a spade. There is a lot of misogyny and bigotry in some of the more toxic corners of the fandom menace, as it's begrudgingly called sometimes. And perhaps with Filoni and Brennan taking the reins now, we'll see a shift, or we'll just see a new boogeyman. Who knows? But along with Kennedy's departure, The Wrap did also put out a statement, or put out an article covering some of the things that we're kind of learning, talking to some insiders about Kathleen Kennedy's tenure and some of the things that happened there. Interesting things to point out here regarding Star Wars. You know, it's not hard to acknowledge some of the difficulties that Star Wars has had. As I mentioned, of course, Star Wars has kind of been relegated at this point to a television property, but, you know, we've had so many broken promises in the world of theatrical releases for Star Wars. We've had announcements and subsequent cancellations of Star Wars movies from Kevin Feige, Taika Waititi, Josh Trank, Damon Lindelof, Patty Jenkins, and David Benioff and D.B. Weiss from Game of Thrones. We've had so many different movies there. We also had films that were in the process of being developed. There was a Jabba the Hutt movie being developed by Guillermo del Toro, which, let me just say that again, let that sink in. Jabba the Hutt movie from Guillermo del Toro. Crazy. And then, of course, we have the very famous, as chat references here, the Soderbergh movie, which would have been The Hunt for Ben Solo, with Adam Driver and Soderbergh teaming up for that movie, as we recently learned. You know, maybe that movie's not dead and gone at this point. This creative shakeup, this leadership shakeup, and the public outcry that we've had in support for this film, maybe components of that movie come back in some way, shape, or form. And then, you know, Lucasfilm is not just Star Wars. Lucasfilm is also Indiana Jones. They did, of course, have The Dial of Destiny, which came out. I still have not finished watching that movie. I started it, and I still haven't finished it. I am a huge fan of Indiana Jones, and when I was watching it and I wasn't loving it, I was like, I'm not going to do this to myself, and I just paused it and never came back. But there was an animated series surrounding Indiana Jones that was being developed by Rodrigo Blas, who was one of the directors of a Star Wars Visions episode, which is their animated Elseworld style series. It was codenamed Reggie after Jock Lindsay's pet name for his snake in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it would have been the professor and an adventurer getting into scraps and stories set in between the mainline movies, so it would have been sort of in-betweequels. And then there was also a live action series. I do remember when this was sort of leaked a few years back. A live action series developed around Abner Ravenwood, who was Indiana Jones's mentor and the father of Marion Ravenwood, who, of course, is, you know, his baby mama wife at the end of Crystal Skulls. Is that referenced again in Dial of Destiny? I don't know. I didn't get far enough in that movie. You know, look, Kathleen Kennedy, the state of Lucasfilm, it's all super complicated, and I will have some optimism looking forward. But hey, stick around and chat. We're also going to have some optimism looking back. Coming up later after Movie News Monday, we're going to be doing a tier list of all of Kathleen Kennedy's producing credits. This includes her producer and executive producer credits. She's done a lot, okay? I picked out like 48 here, which I feel like that's a pretty good list. So we're going to be doing that here live in just a little bit. And if you're watching the YouTube video, hey, make sure you subscribe, and that'll be coming through a little bit later. But we got to get into the rest of the news. Moving on, do we have Marvel fatigue? Maybe not. So the Hollywood Reporter's Heat Vision here discussed Avengers Doomsday, really complicated marketing rollout for all of its teasers. As you know, maybe you know, maybe you don't. Were you one of these 1 billion people who watched? Avengers Doomsday was doing theatrical exclusive teaser trailers that were releasing 1 week apart from one another, exclusively tied to Avatar Fire and Ash, which meant the only way that you could see the teaser would be to repeatedly go to screenings for Avatar Fire and Ash, or wait for it to leak online, like most people did. They did eventually start releasing them online after they had about a 1 week run in the theaters. But what was the point of this? You know, so many people had complicated issues. Do we talk about the leaks? Do we not talk about the leaks? Do we discuss what we see in shitty iPhone footage, or do we talk about what we see? You know, there was AI upscaled versions of some of the leaks that were coming out and creating this weird sort of Mandela effect of, wait, was this in the actual teaser or was it not? It got super complicated, but through Hollywood Reporter's reporting, it looks like Disney is seeing it as a win. Insiders are saying that the 4 teasers have reached a combined 1.02 billion views, and allegedly Disney seems to be fine with the way that this rollout happened. According to insiders, the social volume for each teaser was on average 188% greater than a typical Marvel drop. They were seemingly okay with the fact that this was a complicated rollout and had leaks and all this kind of stuff, because it just was an opportunity for them to, I guess, create more buzz in all of this confusion. The Russo brothers did also tease that each one of those trailers is narrative information. It's part of a larger story, and I would argue that Doomsday has already started. So, I don't know. I'm very curious, chat. What do you guys think regarding the rollout for Avengers Doomsday? Is this a win? Is this a success? How did you experience the teasers? Did you see them when they were officially released? Did you see the leaks? Did you watch them in theaters? Did you only see one in theater and think that was it? You know, I know myself, being extremely plugged into Marvel stuff, obviously I was seeing it on my feed everywhere, and I did have the issue where I saw every single one as a leaked version rather than the official version. So I remember, for instance, the Captain America one came out early, and there was a bunch of AI upscales of it, which again created this weird Mandela effect of like, wait, was this actually what was filmed, or is this something that was unreal? Like there's a shot in the Captain America Steve Rogers teaser, and in fact I can play it here, where he's walking up to the house. In this shot here, there was an AI upscale version that I didn't realize was an AI upscale, where it showed Robert Downey Jr. walking up to the door and knocking, and it was this shot here. And so I was, I had this weird moment where I was like, wait, what was real and what wasn't? Because I had only seen it in theaters that one time. The Thor one leaked online in French. And so we had people putting around translations of it. And then, of course, again, because AI is everywhere, people doing AI voice clones of Chris Hemsworth's voice saying what was in the translated versions from the French translation, but it wasn't an exact translation. It wasn't actually what the English version was. So that was super complicated. And then the X-Men one, that one leaked by description first rather than actual footage. So I knew what was in it without having seen what was in it. It was just so horrendously complicated. I was just having such a hard time keeping track. But at the end of the day, I am starting to get pretty excited for Doomsday. Yeah, man. I think that, look, all credit to new rock stars who has sort of championed this theory. Eric Voss over at New Rockstars has been pushing this theory that maybe the connective thread between all of these is the children, and the implication of maybe Doom collecting children from all these worlds. So we see Steve Rogers has a child now, a baby. Thor is speaking to his father, but also talking about his adoptive daughter. In lore, in X-Men lore, we know that Cyclops has a child, technically two children. Cable is one of his children, and then there's another child that he has in the books at one point. And then, of course, we know that Shuri has her nephew, T'Challa Jr., that she's worried about, and the Fantastic Four have Franklin. So could it be that the connective thread between everyone is that Doom is maybe taking all the kids and trying to set up something with his battle world with it? I don't know, man. I don't know, but I'm here, and so are apparently a billion other people. We have our first official update for casting on Prime Video's God of War series. Ryan Hurst has been cast to play the live-action Kratos. Which, yeah, I see it. I see it. That being said, if you're a big fan of the game, of the God of War games, and you're like, why is Ryan Hurst a little bit familiar? Well, it is because Ryan Hurst has actually already been a part of the God of War franchise before. He actually, and I'll steal this from this Instagram account, thank you. Ryan Hurst actually voiced Thor in God of War Ragnarok. And the God of War and God of War Ragnarok. So he's already involved with the franchise. He was the voice of Thor and the performance capture for Thor. And now he will be playing Kratos. So just funny way that lined up. If you've never played the God of War games, especially the the new sequel era God of War games, the boy era God of War games, incredible games, really good gameplay, but also really beautiful, wonderful story. The behind the scenes documentary of that first God of War game is so good. If you haven't seen it, Sony will occasionally put out behind the scenes documentaries for their PlayStation exclusive games. There's a really good one for the first Last of Us games, and then there's a really good one here for God of War. But I'm really curious about this show. I do think it's interesting. It seems as though we are going to be sort of doing the show starting from the Norse mythology world, which is an okay entry point, but I feel like you miss out so much on not going all the way back and looking at the Greek mythology era of Kratos and looking at that entire story. I'm sure there's going to be some flashbacks, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot explored there, but I'm really, really curious to see how they pull this show off. It is, look, when you have such incredibly rich source material, it is your story to, it's your game to lose here, essentially. So Prime Video, I wish you all the best. You seem to be doing okay with Fallout, so perhaps things will work out in your favor here with God of War, and gosh, I hope they do. But this isn't the only video game adaptation that Prime Video is working on. We now also have our first official look at Sophie Turner as Lara Croft's Tomb Raider. We talked about this last week. We had some casting updates on the rest of the crew that's going to be joining Sophie Turner on the new Lara Croft Tomb Raider show that is going to be showrun by Phoebe Waller-Bridge of Fleabag fame. I did also see on Twitter, I don't know if I actually pulled those up, there was like more pictures, but I don't know if they were official or if they were kind of leaked. But there were additional pictures, and like, she looks pretty badass in all of them, I'm not gonna lie. And now we live in a world where I have to wonder, like, are any of these AI generated? But like, if that's not freaking Lara Croft Tomb Raider right there, this shot in particular where she's dual wielding, look, props to Sophie Turner, man. Like, she looks like a goddamn superhero. The little jump pose here is kind of silly, but I'm about it. It looks like we're going to be leaning more on the classic version of Tomb Raider, and I'm okay with that. I don't need an Uncharted clone, because allegedly we're going to get more Uncharted movies at some point. Maybe. Probably not, though. So, I'm going to keep an eye out for this. Yeah, stoked. I think too, actually. I think me too. I think I am very optimistic for how this is going to lay out. I have a lot of excitement with the creative team on this one, so we'll keep our eyes up. Speaking of badass women here, can we get some claps in chat for Zoe Saldaña, who now with Avatar Fire and Ash officially becomes the highest grossing actor of all time. The reins that had been held by Scarlett Johansson for the longest time, it is now Zoe Saldaña who is the most successful actor in Hollywood. She actually put out a little statement here. Let's take a listen. I think it was super sweet.
Hi guys, I just want to express my sincerest gratitude for the extraordinary journey that has led me to become the highest grossing film actor of all time today. Deeply grateful and profoundly humbled. And may the next record breaker be another woman. Bye.
And look, let's acknowledge that, because that's super sweet. The fact that the reins of the most financially successful actor, the highest grossing actor, go from one woman to another, that's super great. So hey, props to Zoe. Props to women. And viva la raza. Let's go. We got a Latina up there. Love to see that. So, no, I mean, this is a super big deal for a lot of reasons, but I do think that it does go to show the strength of IP filmmaking, but specifically sci-fi, science fiction IP filmmaking, because the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise is, for all intents and purposes, a sci-fi franchise. Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame are sci-fi stories. Yes, they're superhero stories, but there's so much. There's space travel, there's time travel, there's otherworldly, ancient, alien technology. It has all the tropes of being a sci-fi story. Obviously, the Star Trek franchise, and then, of course, Avatar franchise. Fantastic science fiction work. So, shout out sci-fi, man. Still holding strong. We need to get Zoe in a Star Wars movie. Then she'll have her own Infinity Gauntlet. Never thought of Marvel as sci-fi. I'm going to think about that. You know, I'm currently doing my rewatch of the Marvel movies. If you're following on Letterboxd, you may have seen a couple Doomsday Prep movies going in my watched recently. They really are science fiction movies. Because you got to think about the fact that like superhero stories, especially like the original superhero comics, like were science fiction or fantasy comics. Like think about like Spider-Man, his first premiere was in Amazing Fantasies, right? Was the name of that book. I think Astonishing Fantasies or something like that was where like Ant-Man premiered, like so many of these different types of characters. And you know, I was talking to a friend about Avatar today, and like part of the things, and I know that we have contentious opinions about Avatar, Fire and Ash, that we don't fully agree, but part of what I really liked about Fire and Ash is that it felt a lot more like a science fiction movie than Way of Water did, and I really enjoyed that more than I thought I would. But I think it's just part of what made the first Marvel movies specifically successful, I think, was leaning on that grounded, fictionalized version of like this otherworldly stuff, which like is the core of science fiction. It's taking the improbable to making it a little bit more probable, right? And if you root it in enough scientific adjacent things, it sounds realistic. In either case, though, big shouts, Zoe Saldaña. Good job. Oscar winner, Golden Globe winner, box office winner, but still not in a Star Wars movie. Let's make it happen. Now, as we celebrate the box office, let's pivot a little bit and talk about the world of streaming. So The Rip, the newest Ben Affleck, Matt Damon movie that just came out on Netflix, is coming out on Netflix. Guys, I don't have Netflix. I don't know. They talked about it. I did see an article came out. I haven't read it all the way yet, chat, but there was an article that came out where Matt Damon was talking about some of the feedback that Netflix was giving them on the process of the movie, and they were like, yeah, you have to state the plot of the movie like 3 times because we know people aren't paying attention, or you have to have, you know, traditionally the way you set up an action movie, you have 3 big action set pieces and they scale up accordingly. But with a Netflix movie, you have to have your first action set piece be one of the biggest ones. Otherwise, people aren't going to stick around and watch the whole movie. It's just crazy the way that they really leverage all their data to make their creative decision making. It's kind of insane. But there was something about The Rip that was historic, and I think is frankly a thing that we would never get if it wasn't for the incredibly rough and incredibly successful efforts of the strikes, the writers, and the SAG-AFTRA strike that happened, where as part of their artist equity arrangement, Netflix has made a completely new type of deal for this movie. Under the contract, Netflix and artist equity agreed that all 1,200 people involved in the production of this movie, again, let me say that number nice and clear for you, all 1,200 people involved in the $100 million production of this movie will get a one-time bonus if the show performs well on the streaming service. So we now have the streaming rights equivalent of getting your box office take, getting your box office bonus, your percentages for having a successful movie. The way that Netflix is able to leverage all of the data and all of their user habits to make decisions as to how their content should be performed, they have access to this data, which means they're able to see if their content performs well. So under this new deal, hopefully a landmark deal, hopefully a deal that we see happen time and time again, not just for these major releases for, you know, the Matt Damons and Ben Afflecks of the world, but hopefully for more deals moving forward. Everybody in the crew is rewarded and benefits from a show doing well. So you know, I'm going to be frank, I think that there's a lot of good that comes out of this, but I think a lot of complication as well. Like, how do you trust Netflix if Netflix is in charge of the marketing and Netflix is in charge of how their algorithm works and how much they want to push this onto people and how accessible they want it to be? I remember, and, this is purely anecdotal and purely my experience, but I remember after Emilia Perez started getting a lot of heat, I went onto Netflix expecting to find that movie on the homepage since they were pushing it for all of their awards, and I could not find it. I had to search it in order to see it. So does Netflix have the capability to control the level of success for some of these movies if they don't want to pay out these bonuses? I don't know. That's a hugely pessimistic assumption, but frankly an assumption I have to make because I don't know. There's so much that happens that we don't have access to and we don't have visibility to, but I'm going to choose to look at this at the angle of this could be a really promising, really hopeful thing. Good genre movies made by good Hollywood stars who want their people to get paid. Love this. Absolutely. And I really hope that we see more successful filmmakers and more successful artists leverage their strengths for the best, especially in a world where we do have more direct-to-consumer entertainment, like recognizing that we need to stand up for the people who used to benefit more from the traditional models, who used to benefit more from more consistent work and from getting a little bit of a kickback when a movie did well. So, props to the production for making this happen. And you know what? I'll even give soft golf clap to Netflix for agreeing on that deal. Hopefully the rip did do well and people got some extra change in their pocket ahead of whatever their next gig is, because you got to remember, for most folks in Hollywood, it is a gig to gig economy. So, we'll hope to see more like this in the future. Again, remaining optimistic. But speaking of optimism in the industry, Rockford Files reboot gets NBC pilot. That's not what the actual headline is. NBC pilot order as the network eyes traditional pilot season returns. Now look, part of this article is about Rockford Files, and I guess it's a remake. I don't really know what it is, but we're burying the lead here on what the actual important news here is, which is that NBC, one of the biggest traditional cable broadcasters, is trying to get back into the habit of traditional pilot season. I'm not saying The Pit saved television, but suddenly The Pit is on a traditional season arc shooting production release schedule, and now we have pilot season coming back. So excited for writers. Yes, so excited for everyone. So, what is pilot season? Let's do a little bit of a lesson here before we get into the specific news. So, traditionally, the way that Hollywood used to work is everything ran off of pilot season. And pilot season kind of had different seasons depending on who you were. But traditionally, big networks like NBC, ABC, studios like that would order a bunch of pilots. A pilot is what is the first episode of a TV show. They would petition for pilots, which meant that they would reach out to agencies and writers and ask for the first episode of a potential series. Now, this could be a sitcom, this could be a drama, this could be basically anything that has the potential to be a television. And rather than what's become the norm with, streaming and going into production on full shows all at once and filming all of the 6 to 9 episode series at once, they would film a pilot, an individual pilot. So they would purchase the pilot, and after the writers get, their pilot sold, they would onboard a production team, and then they would do the casting. So they would do pilot season also impacted the world of actors. So you had actors who would on cycle be auditioning for, anywhere from 2 to 6 to 10 different pilots, all in hopes of getting a role that could potentially be picked up by a studio. So studios would film a whole bunch of pilots and they would pick out the good ones. The good ones, they would say, hey, great, this is going to series. And the ones that didn't quite hit, they'd say, hey, nice try, goodbye. And so it was and is a way to get consistent work going. And, people are paid for their work. Even if a pilot doesn't go to order, it gives people opportunities to work on sets, to work in writers' rooms, to work on getting things developed. And it also allows for connections. So many actors in the traditional television world came up from doing pilot seasons and meeting people and knowing people to know people by working on shows that don't get released. Man, there are so many pilots that exist that have just disappeared in the archives of so many different networks, and some that have leaked. I know famously the Powerpuff Girls pilot for the CW, that leaked a while back. Wonder Woman was going to have a TV show that leaked. That pilot leaked a while back. I remember that. So many different things. Pilots too sometimes are refilmed with completely different casts. Famously, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Their pilot had a different actor playing the role of Dee. Caitlin Olsen was brought on after the pilot, and they refilmed the first episode of the show to recast her character. So many different things like that have happened. But pilot season is possibly coming back. Again, with the rise of streaming, pilot season kind of went away. NBC is looking to bring it back in a yearly cadence that many in the industry miss, greenlighting drama and comedy pilots in January and February, producing them in time for May upfronts for a spot on the next season's schedule. So, could we see the return of pilot season in Hollywood? Gosh, I hope so, because it breeds for so much more collaboration, so much more originality, and yes, sometimes some reboots and stuff like that. But hey, if we're filming pilots and getting the first episode out of the way, rather than just greenlighting entire seasons and then canceling them after one season, I'd rather do that. So hey, maybe this is a good sign. Maybe we're actually breathing some life back into this industry. Who knows? I'm sincerely optimistic for this. Pete Davidson is about to host the first official Netflix original podcast. Did I call this? Not this specifically, but a version of this. Yes, and man, I should have put it on my 2026 predictions. Netflix is officially getting into the podcast game, and they are now launching their first official podcast, The Pete Davidson Show. Pete Davidson Show will see the comedian sitting down with his famous friends for revealing conversations from the comfort of his garage. Netflix was the home of one of my first stand-up specials, Davidson said, so it felt right to bring the podcast there too. It's me and my friends talking about anything and everything. It's gonna be a great time. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to me. Bad hang, chat. It's really interesting to me that Netflix kind of lays their foundation for their podcast of like, yeah, like my gimmick is that I'm a comedian and I'm gonna have buddies hanging out with me in my basement. You know, where you have shows like Good Hang that just won the first Golden Globe for podcasting, where it's a lot more researched and intentional and produced, and where this is like, yeah, I'm gonna hang out with my basement. It's like, okay, what separates this from any other white guy with a podcast except for the fact that it's Pete Davidson? But in either case, Netflix is looking to have their competition against YouTube. As we've discussed in the past, YouTube is the biggest streaming platform, and Netflix and Disney and all the other studios with streaming services see YouTube as the competition, and podcasting on YouTube is a massive, massive platform right now. Video podcasts do well. Talking about Netflix, how they try and push folks to essentially do background content as their gimmick. YouTube and video podcasts is the main background content, but in an attempt to compete with YouTube, Netflix has partnered with companies like iHeartMedia, Barstool Sports, Spotify Studios, and The Ringer to bring popular podcasts exclusively to Netflix. So, you know, for something that you're supposed to listen to in your car in the future, you will have to make sure you have Netflix installed in order to listen to it. I don't know what else to say other than, like, you know, podcasting is definitely going to continue to explode more and more. And to hit my 2026 predictions, I can't wait to see Stephen Colbert's podcast get announced. What celebrity are you waiting for their podcast to come out? Which podcast would you actually be excited for? I would love to see... you know what? I'd love to see, like, someone like Steven Spielberg, who's, like, has so many war stories of old Hollywood, have a podcast. That wouldn't happen. But Steven Spielberg doesn't yap. Who yaps? Jennifer Lawrence. Let's get Jennifer Lawrence podcast. I'd watch a Jennifer Lawrence podcast. That's, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. DC director teases that the Blue Beetle is coming to the DCU. So, Blue Beetle, man, this is a movie that got left behind. And as one of the, like, 4 Latin American superheroes that exist, I want to make sure that Blue Beetle doesn't get forgotten, all right? Jaime Reyes did have his feature film come out, I think roughly around the time of COVID. Oh my god, maybe not. It was 2023. I don't know. This movie just flopped. It didn't do that well. It came out at a weird time and a weird time of transition where James Gunn and Peter Safran had taken over the studio, although this movie had been greenlit under the old guard of DC. And James Gunn had promised that Blue Beetle and Jaime Reyes and Zola Maridueña's rendition of the character would still be canon to the DCU. We did get a update from Angel Manuel Soto, who was the director of the movie. He confirmed there have been conversations have been happening, and that James Gunn has been very vocal about keeping Blue Beetle in the DCU, so good things are coming for Jaime Reyes and his family, and I appreciate that he mentioned his family as well, because one of the things that I loved about this movie, on top of the fact of, again, you know, seeing myself on screen and by seeing a Latin superhero, is that his family was so ingrained in the story, and just, you know, there's a lot of values about family and a lot of very fun interplay of comedy and laughs and heart that come from just the big messy Latin families, man, that I just love to see. So really charming movie, fun little sci-fi comedy family romp. Go check it out if you can. Give Blue Beetle some love on the streaming, and then maybe we'll see him show up soon. My guess is, I don't know, maybe Teen Titans, maybe Titans. That would make sense. That would make sense. But folks, that's gonna wrap it up here today for Movie News Monday. If you are watching live, coming up next, we're going to be working on our Kathleen Kennedy tier list. If you are not watching live, hey, what are you doing? Get on over to Twitch so you can watch everything happen at once and you don't have to wait for me to edit the videos and put them out on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to know what the heck is going on in the world of entertainment, movies, TV, new media, podcasts, so much to cover, make sure that you're following along. You can catch us live on Mondays, Movie News Mondays, over on twitch.tv/JupyGorg. You can hit a like and subscribe on the YouTube channel so that the YouTube's algorithm will keep bringing you down here. And if you want to see our content in short bursts or know when we're going live, we can catch you on TikTok and Instagram. Folks, I have been JupyGorg. Thank you so much, and I will see you at the movies. Damn it, I did the finger guns again. I keep saying I'm going to stop doing the finger guns.